The ocean you swim in today is essentially a tamed version of what it used to be. The scariest thing you'll encounter is maybe a jellyfish, but go back far enough, and we're talking hundreds of millions of years. And the ocean wasn't a place anything survived casually. It was a world where giants ruled at every level. Different eras, different creatures, wildly different shapes, and yet all of them kept arriving at the exact same solution: get massive. The reason why is one of the most fascinating stories in the history of life on Earth. Before we talk about any specific creature, we need to understand something fundamental, something that most people never think about, but that explains everything you're about to hear. The ocean cheats, in a physics way. And once you understand this, the whole story of prehistoric giants starts to make complete sense. Here's the thing. On land, size has a hard ceiling, and that ceiling is gravity. Every kilogram of body mass you add on land means more stress on your skeleton, more pressure on your joints, more work your heart has to do to pump blood across a larger body. There's a reason the largest land animal that ever existed, a sauropod dinosaur, topped out at around 80 tons. Go much beyond that on land, and your own body starts working against you. Your legs would need to be as thick as tree trunks. Your heart would struggle to push blood all the way to your extremities. Your internal organs would begin to compress under their own weight. The ocean simply doesn't have this problem. When you're submerged in water, buoyancy offsets most of your weight. The water pushes back against gravity and carries the load that your skeleton would otherwise have to support alone. This is why you feel lighter in a swimming pool. And for an animal living its entire life underwater, this means the usual size limits essentially stop applying. A megalodon, which we'll get to, weighed close to 100 tons. On land, that body would collapse, bones would shatter, organs would be crushed. But in water, it moved, hunted, and dominated, because the ocean was carrying most of the weight the whole time. And there's another dimension to this, literally. The ocean is three-dimensional in a way that land simply isn't. On land, you move across a surface. In the ocean, you move through an entire volume of space, up, down, left, right, in any direction. This means the ocean can support vastly more life per unit of space. More life means more food. More food means more fuel to grow massive bodies. So right from the start, the ocean had two things going for it that land never did. It canceled gravity, and it offered an almost unlimited food supply in 3 dimensions. Those two things together are basically a blank check for gigantism. Now, with that foundation in place, let's talk about the first giant to cash that check. It is 470 million years ago, the Ordovician period. And if you think the ocean back then was some kind of peaceful, primitive place, you're about to be very wrong. Meet Endocarus. When you first see this thing, it looks like someone glued a dunce cap to a squid and called it a predator. It's essentially a giant cone, a long, hard, pointed shell with a cluster of tentacles dangling from the open end. No jaw, dramatic teeth, and fearsome, streamlined body. And yet this was the undisputed apex predator of its entire era. How? Simple. It was enormous. Most estimates put Endocarus at around 20 feet long. Some fossils suggest related species potentially reached 23 feet. And here's what makes that genuinely impressive. That's not squishy trailing tentacles adding to the length stat the way a giant squid's measurement works. That's solid, real, heavy animal mass wrapped in a hard protective shell. Some individuals weighed close to 700 pounds. But more importantly, and this is the key thing to understand about why the first giants appeared, Endocarus didn't need to be fast or agile or intelligent, because nothing else in that ocean was fast or agile or intelligent either. There were no sharks yet, no marine reptiles, no quick darting predators of any kind. The Ordovician ocean was full of early life forms. Primitive fish, small invertebrates, simple organisms, all of them slow, simple, and essentially easy meals. In that world, being huge wasn't just an advantage, it was the whole game. You were too big for anything to mess with, you could eat anything you wanted, and your only real competition was other Endoceras, which meant the only pressure to grow bigger came from your own kind. That last part is crucial, because it sets up the pattern that is going to repeat itself for the next 400 million years. When the main predator in an ecosystem only has to worry about competition from others of its own species, what happens? Both sides of that competition keep escalating. You get a little bigger, I get a little bigger, you get bigger again. Round and round, generation after generation, on each side of the arms race pushing the other toward larger and larger bodies. Endoceras didn't get massive because of some grand environmental shift. It got massive because it started an arms race with itself, and the ocean, with its buoyancy and its abundant food, had no reason to stop it. Eventually, though, the Ordovician gave way to new eras, new life evolved, and things that were faster and more dangerous started appearing in the water. Endoceras, with that giant clunky shell, suddenly wasn't untouchable anymore. It faded out, but the arms race it started, that was just getting warmed up. Here's the thing about an arms race. Once it begins, it has a momentum of its own. And over the next 100+ million years, the ocean was about to demonstrate this with brutal consistency. After the orthocones declined, something new moved into the apex predator slot, and following the exact same logic, the same pressure, the same escalation, it also got enormous. These were the Eurypterids, more commonly known as sea scorpions. And yes, they looked exactly like what that name implies, giant scorpions in the ocean. The largest of them, Jacalopterus, reached over 8 feet in length. To put that into perspective, that's bigger than most of the people watching this video, and it has claws. This wasn't some harmless bottom dweller. This was an active, predatory, genuinely terrifying animal that dominated shallow seas. Now here's what's important. The Eurypterids didn't get big because of high oxygen levels, that common explanation people reach for. The Carboniferous period, with its famously high oxygen, hadn't even arrived yet. The Eurypterids reached giant sizes millions of years before any oxygen spike. So why did they get so large? Same reason as before: arms race, competition. With the orthocones in decline, the ecosystem opened up. Eurypterids were suddenly competing with each other, with early fish that were getting more sophisticated, with a whole range of new prey that was also evolving and getting harder to catch. When everything around you is getting tougher, the only reliable way to stay on top is to get bigger. More mass meant more strength, more reach, more crushing power in those claws. In the shallow competitive seas of the Silurian and Devonian periods, size was still the most reliable weapon available. And then, the fish got in on the game. By the Devonian period, a time sometimes called the Age of Fishes, the ocean had started an entirely new round of escalation. Fish were developing something the orthocones and early life never had: armor. Thick, ebony plates covering their bodies like medieval knights of the sea. These were the placoderms, armored fish that looked like they'd been designed by an engineer who really didn't want anything eating them. But here's where evolution shows its most relentless logic. When prey develops armor, predators develop stronger jaws to break it. When predators develop stronger jaws, prey develops thicker armor. When the armor gets thicker, the jaws get stronger. And this cycle kept going until it produced what might be the most intimidating fish that ever existed: Dunkleosteus, 20 to 30 feet long, with a head that was essentially a block of solid armor plating, no teeth. Instead, it had bony blades where its jaws should be, self-sharpening against each other every time it bit down, creating edges sharper than most teeth could ever be. Scientists have estimated its bite force at over 8,000 pounds per square inch, more powerful than a T-Rex. It was the final boss of the Devonian arms race, the logical conclusion of hundreds of millions of years of escalating competition. And the most fascinating detail: Dunkleosteus fossils have been found with bite marks from other Dunkleosteus. These apex predators were eating each other, just like Endoceras before them. When you're the biggest thing in the ocean, the only real competition left is yourself. The pattern was now fully established. Era after era, a new type of creature steps into the apex role. gets pressured by competition, and scales up to enormous size. The ocean isn't producing giants by accident. It's producing them on demand. Every single time the competitive pressure builds enough. Fast forward now, past the catastrophic Permian extinction that wiped out 95% of all marine species and the early Triassic recovery. We land in the Cretaceous period, and the ocean has had time to rebuild. And when it rebuilt bigger than ever before. The Cretaceous ocean was genuinely unlike anything before or since. Sea levels were dramatically higher than today. So high that a shallow inland sea cut right through the middle of North America. Water temperatures were warmer across the globe. Reef systems were massive and extraordinarily productive. And this combination of warm water, shallow seas, and explosive reef growth created something that the arms race had always needed, but rarely had in such abundance: almost unlimited food. When food is genuinely plentiful, body size has almost no upper limit. You don't have to be efficient. You don't have to conserve energy. You can just grow and grow, as long as something bigger isn't going to come along and eat you. But of course, when everyone has access to that food supply, everyone grows. And when everyone grows, the competition intensifies. And intensified competition pushes sizes even higher. The Cretaceous ocean didn't just have one giant. It had giants at every level of the food chain. Consider Archelon, the largest sea turtle that ever existed, 13 feet long, shell wider than most cars, flippers built for crossing entire oceans, over 4,000 pounds. And here's the thing about Archelon. It wasn't a predator. It was prey. This was a turtle that had to grow to the size of a small car just to have a fighting chance of not being eaten. When even the herbivores and filter feeders have to reach those sizes to survive, the predators driving that pressure must have been extraordinary. And they were. The mosasaurs were a group of marine reptiles that could reach 50 feet in length. Think of a crocodile's head, a whale's body, and a shark's tail, all combined into one animal that could eat almost anything it encountered. They weren't one species. They were an entire family of apex predators, diversified across different sizes and hunting strategies, filling the ocean with reptilian giants the way modern oceans are filled with different species of sharks. This is the Cretaceous in a nutshell. More food than ever before, more competition than ever before, and a relentless arms race that kept pushing everything larger. The ocean at this point wasn't occasionally producing giants. It was manufacturing them systematically, at scale, across the entire food chain simultaneously. It was the most monster-dense ocean that had ever existed, up until the next one. The asteroid hit 66 million years ago and reset everything. The mosasaurs were gone. Archelon was gone. The warm, shallow seas of the Cretaceous drained and cooled. For a while, the ocean's giant producing machine went relatively quiet, but the ocean never actually stopped. It just changed the cast. Mammals, which had been small, rodent-like creatures hiding from dinosaurs during the Cretaceous, suddenly had an open world to fill, and some of them headed for the water. Within about 10 million years of the asteroid impact, a creature called Basilosaurus was already cruising the oceans. It was a whale, but not any whale you'd recognize. Basilosaurus looked like someone had stretched a whale into the shape of an eel, 65 feet long, sinuous, serpentine, with a long snout full of sharp, serrated teeth. Unlike modern whales, which mostly filter feed or use suction, Basilosaurus chewed its prey. Fossil evidence suggests it ate sharks, large fish, and other marine mammals. It was the first mammal to fully dominate the apex predator role in the ocean, proof that the pattern hadn't broken. It had just switched from reptiles to mammals. But what came after Basilosaurus in the Miocene epoch, roughly 10 to 15 million years ago, is arguably the most extraordinary chapter in the entire story of prehistoric ocean giants. Because for the first time in hundreds of millions of years of ocean history, the ocean had two apex predators of essentially equal size competing in the same waters simultaneously. The first was Megalodon. And if you've heard of one prehistoric sea creature in your life, it's probably this one. Megalodon was a shark. But calling it a shark, the way you'd call a great white a shark, is like calling a freight train a bicycle, because they both have wheels. Megalodon reached lengths of 50 to 60 feet and weighed up to 100 tons. Its teeth were the size of a human hand. 7 inches long, serrated, heart-shaped. Paleontologists have found its teeth on every continent on Earth, because this animal was everywhere. Its bite force was estimated at around 40,000 pounds per square inch, strong enough to crush the chest cavity of the largest whales alive at the time, puncturing their ribs like they were cardboard. To give you a sense of scale, a full-grown human being would be roughly the same height as Megalodon's dorsal fin. You would not be a threat to this animal. You would be a snack. And Megalodon could sustain that size because it lived during the Miocene, when baleen whales, massive, blubber-rich, energy-dense, had become enormously abundant. Megalodon essentially evolved as a specialized whale hunting machine. The ocean gave it the food supply, and it scaled up accordingly. But here's where it gets extraordinary. In the same waters, at the same time, hunting the same prey, there was something else. Leviathan melvillei, named after the biblical sea monster Leviathan, and after Herman Melville, who wrote Moby Dick. Both very appropriate choices for what this animal was. Leviathan was a whale, a predatory sperm whale, 13 to 17 meters long, comparable in size to Megalodon. But while Megalodon was the largest shark that ever lived, Leviathan holds a different record entirely. It had the largest functional biting teeth of any animal ever discovered on Earth, 14 inches long, full teeth on both the upper and lower jaw, unlike modern sperm whales which only have lower teeth and mostly suck up squid. Leviathan grabbed prey the way a killer whale does, just with a skull 3 times bigger. Its mouth was roughly 6 feet long and 4 feet wide. Its jaw muscles were so enormous that the temporal fossa, the depression in the skull where those muscles anchor, was visibly massive even on a 3-meter fossilized skull. This animal hunted baleen whales, medium-sized ones, 25 to 35 feet long, rich in fat and energy. And it hunted them while sharing the ocean with Megalodon, which was doing exactly the same thing. Scientists have found both their fossils, Megalodon teeth and Leviathan teeth, in the same deposits in Peru, alongside the bones of the whales they both hunted. They weren't separated by millions of years. They were there together, 2 apex predators, each one individually the most dangerous animal its kind ever produced, occupying the same ocean at the same time. This was the prehistoric ocean at its absolute peak, not just full of giants, overflowing with them. The arms race had now scaled up so far that even the predators had predators of equivalent size. The ocean had truly become something that no amount of imagination could fully prepare you for. And then it started to wind down. Megalodon went extinct around 3.6 million years ago. Leviathan disappeared around the same time, likely as the cooling of the oceans drove their whale prey toward the poles, where cold-adapted species could more efficiently hunt them. The age of the great prehistoric giants was, by most definitions, over. But here's the thing that should genuinely stop you in your tracks. It wasn't actually over. The pattern, the same pattern that started with Endoceras 470 million years ago, never broke. It just kept going. The ocean was still full of food. Competition was still driving escalation. The arms race never ended. It just changed players again. As Megalodon faded, orcas were rising, more agile, more intelligent, hunting in coordinated packs in a way no prehistoric predator had ever done. The great white shark was growing and spreading. Sperm whales were evolving into deep-diving specialists capable of hunting giant squid in total darkness at depths that would crush a submarine. Every niche that a prehistoric giant had vacated was being filled by something new, something shaped by the same pressures, adapted to a changed ocean. And then there's this, the blue whale, right now, today. Swimming in the same oceans you can fly over on a commercial flight. The blue whale is not just the largest animal alive. It is the largest animal that has ever lived in the 4 billion year history of life on this planet. bigger than any mosasaur. A blue whale can reach 100 feet in length and weigh up to 200 tons. For comparison, the largest Megalodon, the animal that could crush a whale's rib cage in a single bite, weighed about 100 tons at most. One blue whale outweighs 2 megalodons. Its heart is the size of a small car. A human being could crawl through its arteries. When it calls, the sound can travel thousands of miles through the ocean. And it got that big for exactly the same reason every prehistoric giant got big. It arrived into an ocean with an enormous food supply, krill, available in quantities almost beyond calculation, concentrated in cold, productive waters, and the ocean's buoyancy meant its body could keep growing without collapse. The arms race that drove it was the co-evolution between whales and the prey and predators around them, the same pattern that started nearly 500 million years ago. So why were prehistoric oceans full of giants? Because the ocean is the one place on Earth where gravity loosens its grip enough to let life go truly enormous. Because every time a giant appears, it triggers an arms race that forces everything around it to grow. Because warm seas and abundant food have periodically given that process an almost unlimited fuel supply. And because once evolution finds a strategy that works, get big, dominate, survive, it never really abandons it. The prehistoric giants are gone, but the ocean never stopped making monsters. It just made different ones, and the largest one is alive right now. We've only explored 5% of the ocean. If the explored part had monsters like these, what do you think is in the other 95%? Comment below and subscribe for more.